I had always prided myself on being a responsible wife and a dedicated stepmother. I had carved out a life that, while predictable, felt secure. David and I shared a comfortable home in a quaint neighborhood, where the evenings unfolded in familiar rhythms, dinners with Mark, my 16-year-old stepson, and the occasional catch-up with my best friend Juliet. Yet, in the depths of my heart, I sometimes wondered what it would be like to feel truly alive, to shake off the shackles of routine, even if just for a night. It was an unusually warm Friday evening when Juliet called, her voice laced with excitement. "Laurel, there's a party tonight at Eric's place. You have to come. It's going to be amazing." Eric, my neighbor, was known for his lavish parties, but David was working late, and I hadn't planned on going out. "I don't know, Jules. David is going to be home late, and I don't want to leave Mark alone," I replied, glancing over at my stepson, who was absorbed in a video game. "Mark will be fine. He's a teenager. Come on, just this once. I promise it'll be fun." After a moment of hesitation, I relented. I slipped into a soft black dress that hugged my curves just right, and with a quick spritz of perfume, I stepped out into the balmy evening, leaving the confines of my responsibilities behind. The music thumped as I approached Eric's house, the laughter and chatter spilling into the night air. Juliet was waiting at the door, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You look fantastic. Just wait until you see everyone." Inside, the atmosphere was electric. I was swept into a sea of familiar faces, each more vibrant than the last. I let myself be carried away by the music, the drinks flowing freely, loosening the constraints I had placed upon myself. I found myself laughing with friends, dancing like no one was watching, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a flutter of something intoxicating, a desire to be more than just Laurel, the dutiful wife. As the night wore on, I found myself drawn to Eric, who was a charismatic presence, effortlessly charming everyone around him. He had always been friendly, but tonight, there was something different in the way he looked at me, a spark that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on my drink, but he kept appearing beside me, his laughter ringing like music in my ears. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked, leaning closer than necessary. I could smell the cologne he wore, a heady mix that made my heart race. "Yeah, it's great. Thanks for hosting," I replied, my voice catching slightly. He grinned, and for a moment, I was lost in his gaze. "You're even more beautiful than I remember." My cheeks flushed, and I quickly turned back to the crowd, but his words lingered in the air, igniting something deep within me. I caught Juliet's eye across the room, and she gave me a knowing smile, as if she sensed the tension brewing. As the hours slipped by, I felt increasingly intoxicated, not just from the wine but from the atmosphere, the freedom, and the undeniable chemistry crackling between Eric and me. I knew it was reckless, I was a married woman, but the thrill of it was almost overwhelming. When Eric invited me to join him on the patio for some fresh air, I felt a thrill of excitement and fear rush through me. The night sky was a blanket of stars, and the cool breeze felt like a balm on my heated skin. We leaned against the railing, and I could feel his warmth beside me, an electric current that buzzed through the space between us. "Do you ever feel trapped?" he asked, his voice low and earnest. "Sometimes," I admitted, my heart racing as I gazed out into the darkness. "It's easy to get lost in the routine of life." He turned to me, his eyes piercing and full of something unspoken. "You don't have to feel that way, you know. You deserve to feel alive." My breath caught in my throat as he took a step closer, the air thick with tension. Before I could fully process it, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers grazing my skin like a spark igniting a flame. "Eric," I started, but the protest died on my lips as he leaned in closer, his lips mere inches from mine. The world around us faded, and in that moment, all that mattered was the pull between us. And then he kissed me. It was soft at first, a tentative exploration, but as I responded, it deepened into something urgent, something desperate. The weight of my life, my commitments, faded into the background as I lost myself in the moment. I had forgotten how exhilarating it could be to feel desired, to feel wanted. But as quickly as it began, reality crashed back. I pulled away, breathless and bewildered. "Eric, we can't." "I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I can't help how I feel about you." A whirlwind of thoughts crashed in my mind. David, Mark, the life I had built. I stepped back, feeling the cold reality wash over me. "I need to go. I'm sorry." As I hurried back inside, my heart raced not just from the kiss but from the storm of emotions brewing within me. I found Juliet, who raised an eyebrow at my flushed cheeks. "What happened out there?" "Nothing. I just need to get home," I insisted, my voice shaky. She studied me, concern etching her features. "You look like you've just run a marathon. Are you okay?" I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside I was a tempest. The guilt threatened to consume me as I excused myself and stepped out into the cool night air, the reality of my life crashing back down around me. The drive home was a blur. I replayed the night in my mind, the thrill of the kiss mingling with the guilt of what I had almost let happen. When I walked through the front door, the house was dark and quiet, save for the faint sound of Mark's video game still echoing from his room. I paused, leaning against the door, my heart heavy with the weight of my choices. David would be home soon, and I had to face the truth. I had crossed a line, and now I was left with the consequences.
In the days that followed, I found myself trapped in a cycle of guilt and longing. I avoided Eric, my neighbor's magnetic presence a constant reminder of the thrill I had tasted. I tried to immerse myself in my routine, helping Mark with homework, cooking dinner for David, and pretending that everything was fine, but my heart felt like it was splintering. One evening, as I sat on the couch, lost in thought, Juliet called. "We need to talk," she said, her voice serious. I met her at a coffee shop the next day, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. "You're not yourself, Laurel," she said, her eyes searching mine. "What happened that night?" I hesitated, but the weight of my secret felt unbearable. "I kissed Eric," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. Juliet's eyes widened. "Oh wow, that's big. What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I feel so torn. I love David, but I can't shake this feeling of wanting something more." She leaned back, thoughtful. "You need to figure out what you truly want, Laurel. Not what you think you should want, but what will make you happy." Her words lingered in my mind as I left the cafe, each step feeling heavier than the last. That night, as I lay in bed next to David, I realized that I had to confront my feelings, not just for Eric, but for my own life. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself at a crossroads. I knew that I couldn't continue living a life that didn't feel like my own. The thrill of that night still echoed in my heart, but I also knew that I had responsibilities toward David, toward Mark, and most importantly, toward myself. Finally, one evening, I sat David down. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but my heart racing. He looked concerned, his brow furrowing. "Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, ready to be honest. "I've been feeling lost, David. I love you, but I think we've fallen into a routine that's stifling us both." He listened, his expression softening as I spoke. I felt it too, but I didn't know how to bring it up. As we opened the lines of communication, the conversation flowed like a river, carrying away the weight of unspoken feelings. We discussed our dreams, our desires, and the need for adventure in our lives. It was a revelation, a shared moment of vulnerability that brought us closer together. That night, we rediscovered our connection, reigniting the spark that had been dimmed by routine. In the weeks that followed, we made a conscious effort to shake things up, date nights, weekend trips, and open conversations about our desires. And while the memory of my kiss with Eric lingered, I found solace in the renewed love I shared with David. Life is a tapestry woven with moments, both thrilling and mundane. I had faced temptation and navigated through the storm of my emotions, ultimately emerging stronger and more self-aware. While the thrill of that night would always be a part of my story, it was the journey back to love that truly changed everything. And in the end, I chose to embrace the life I had with David, knowing that sometimes the greatest adventure lies in rediscovering what you thought you had lost.